Hello everybody. Today we're going to be talking about Visual Studio and the build errors that you can get while you're programming in the Visual Studio software. So Visual Studio, like a lot of other programming software, if they detect a build error in your program, then they won't let you run the program. So if you ever are programming in a project and you get like red squiggly lines or anything like that, those are build errors. And Visual Studio will detect those before you even try to run the program. And so if you do try to run the program with those things in it, it'll cut you off. It won't let you run the program because there are these build errors that will just break your program down and make it where it can't run. And so Visual Studio has given us a lot of tools to help us figure out what the build error is and where they are. So to demonstrate this today, I've created a program called visualstudio.cpp if you're using the GitHub. If you're not, then the description of the video should have the program in it. You can just copy that and paste that into your main. It will have all the build errors included with that. All right, so if you're using the GitHub, you'll have to uncomment a lot of code in order to see the build errors and to run them, because what Visual Studio does is it will detect these build errors and just won't let you even run the program, even if you're not calling it. So even though I had the Visual Studio call function commented out, it still wouldn't let me run any of the programs because there would still be build errors in the Visual Studio.cpp. And this right here, this is the little swiggle line I'm talking about. Right now the build error is Visual Studio main is undefined, but we're going to fix that one real quick. So in the main.cpp, you uncomment line 10. In the header file, you'll want to uncomment line 7. And in the Visual Studio.cpp file, you'll want to uncomment line 7 and then clean up the tag or the end at line 54. All right. And so, as I'm sure a lot of you have probably noticed, there's a little red X with a 1 down here. This tells us that there's one error somewhere in our program. And in our bar over here, you can see this little red line or this little red dot right here. That right there is also showing you where the build error is. And those are just two of the ways that you can figure out where the build error is. A better way is typically to go to your error list, because it will display the error, a description of the error, what file it's in, and what line it's in. So right here we can see that on line 14 of our Visual Studio.cpp, there is an error and it's expecting a semicolon here. So I'm not going to fix this right now because I want to show you what can happen if you leave these build errors unfixed before you run the program. So if I were to try to run this now, we should get a little window here saying, yep, there are build errors. Would you like to continue with the last successful build? No, we do not, because there is no last successful build. And you'll see that that one error we had turned into 22 errors. And typically if you get this, it'll be very confusing because you'll be looking at it and it's like this check number here, identifier is not found, sins undeclared, and all these things that you think you've been using your whole life will just be undeclared for some reason and they just break down. And the reason for this is that this specific build error we have is a pretty common one that I think a lot of people face, which is just not having a semicolon, which means that whatever's happening, one line has an error, and if that line is a very important line, then a lot of the rest of your program is going to break down because of it. So with this one, let's see if I can find it in here. It's right here. Otherwise, you can go to your output to help figure this out, because the output also gives you a little error window. You can go over here. The error list doesn't typically organize it as well as I would like it to. So I sometimes go to the output to figure that out, because it tells you the exact same information, but it tells you the order in which things broke down. So right here we can see that in our Visual Studio.cpp, line 14, character 1 experienced an error, and the error was it expected a semicolon, but it got an int instead. So we can see here that even though our error seems to be on line 14, the error is that it got an int instead of a semicolon. So we can tell that our error is actually before this part right here, meaning that the error is up here. Just add a semicolon, and that should fix everything. So now if I were to run it, run the program, all 22 of those errors, no longer there. All those 22 errors were built off of this std not being declared as a namespace. So anything that would have to do with that became an error. And the error list doesn't care, it just spits out all the errors. So that's why it's typically good to fix these errors before you get to that point of running the program, because then it'll just give you all these errors that are built off of one. And so the things to take away from this video are how to fix these errors and how to figure out exactly where they are. And the way to do that is by reading this error list right here. So if I were to take that semicolon away, just to show, by understanding the description, and sometimes the descriptions don't make sense, by the way. You're going to have to go online and look up what these errors mean, and it might take a lot of work, but it's worth it to fix it now before you actually run the program and you get 22 errors and you have no idea what they mean. So I hope that this video was a little bit of help teaching you how to read these error lines in the error list and to fix these build errors. In the next video, we're going to be talking about the different tools Visual Studio gives us to fix things that aren't just build errors. And so I guess I'll see y'all later. Goodbye.